Below is an original hook and introduction that models the narrative flow, pacing, and emotional mechanics of the competitor's opening without copying wording, imagery, or sentence structure. It uses the same story logic. Ordinary life, quiet temptation, moral choice, unseen power, the moment everything tilts. Maya Johnson's life ran on exhaustion and small calculations. How many hours she could work before her feet gave out. How many tips she needed to cover rent and still afford next semester's nursing fees. Every night at the diner ended the same way. Sticky counters, ringing ears, and a future that felt just barely within reach if she didn't make a single wrong move. That future wavered the night she found the wallet. It was near closing, the diner almost empty, neon lights humming overhead like tired insects. Maya was clearing the last booth when her fingers brushed against something wedged between the seat and the wall. Smooth, heavy, expensive in a way that didn't belong among chipped mugs and cracked vinyl. The wallet wasn't worn. It wasn't ordinary. It felt deliberate. Inside was more cash than Maya had ever seen in one place. Neatly stacked bills. No clutter, no mess. Just money and a single name. Victor Hale. She didn't know who he was, but she knew what the wallet represented. 2 semesters of tuition. Relief. Sleep. A chance to breathe without counting pennies. The kind of opportunity people prayed for and never admitted they'd take if it appeared. Maya closed the wallet. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her head, steady and unforgiving. Easy money always asks for something back. Returning it was the right thing to do. She believed that. She needed to believe that. What she didn't know was that nothing about this moment was accidental. Behind the diner counter, with grease on her hands and doubt in her chest, Maya picked up the phone and dialed the number tucked inside the wallet. She expected confusion, gratitude, maybe suspicion. What she got was silence. Then a voice, calm, measured, unmistakably in control. He didn't ask where she found it. He didn't thank her. He didn't sound surprised. He told her to wait. In that instant, Maya understood something she couldn't yet explain. The choice she'd made hadn't ended the problem. It had invited someone powerful to notice her. Returning the wallet wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a test. And whatever Victor Hale decided about her in the next few minutes would matter far more than the money she'd refused to take. Maya wiped the counter slowly, letting the rhythm of the motion settle her thoughts. The diner was almost empty now, the late-night rush reduced to a low hum from the refrigerators and the soft buzz of the neon sign outside. Booth 7 sat abandoned near the back wall, the red vinyl seat still warm from the man who had occupied it for nearly an hour without saying more than 2 words. He hadn't looked like he belonged there. Too composed, too still. His suit had been dark and perfectly fitted, the kind of clothing that didn't wrinkle no matter how long you sat. He'd ordered a club soda, paid with a crisp bill, and left without waiting for change. His presence lingering long after the door had closed behind him. Maya grabbed a rag and slid into the booth to wipe it down. Her fingers traced the seam where the seat met the wall, following habit more than thought. That was when she felt it, something smooth and solid, wedged deep where careless hands rarely reached. A pause. Slowly, she pushed her fingers further into the gap and pulled out a wallet. Not a cheap one. Not something worn and softened by years of use. This was heavy, structured, made of dark leather that caught the light in a way that felt intentional. It didn't look lost. It looked placed. Her pulse picked up. Maya glanced toward the front of the diner. The door was locked. Her manager was in the back counting the register, humming off key. No one was watching her. The wallet sat in her hand, quiet and full of promise. She shouldn't open it. She knew that. She did anyway. Inside were stacks of bills, clean and precise, held together with a clip that looked more expensive than anything she owned. No receipts, no clutter, just money. Enough that her breath caught as she counted without meaning to. Enough to change things. She swallowed hard. The next slot held an ID. Victor Hale. The photo showed the man from the booth. The same calm eyes. The same unreadable expression. The address listed wasn't anywhere near her neighborhood. It was the kind of place people talked about in lowered voices, places with gates and guards and silence built into the walls. Her unease deepened. Maya closed the wallet and sat back, pressing it against the table as if it might slide away on its own. Her mind raced, calculating possibilities she didn't want to admit. Tuition, rent, textbooks, a car that didn't break down every other week. Nights without counting tips before bed. She could put it back. Pretend she never found it. She could turn it in to her manager, though the thought made her stomach twist. Lenny had a way of losing things that weren't his. Or she could do the right thing. The phrase felt heavier than usual. Her grandmother's voice rose unbidden, steady and familiar. Easy money never stays easy. You don't sleep well on stolen comfort. Maya pressed her lips together. She didn't need luck. She needed peace. Still she hesitated. The wallet felt like a test even before she knew it was one. The kind that didn't announce itself. That waited quietly for you to reveal who you were when no one was looking. She thought of the man's stillness, the way he'd left without a backward glance. He hadn't seemed careless enough to lose something like this. That realization sent a chill through her. Maya stood and walked behind the counter, setting the wallet down beside the register as if distance might make it less tempting. She stared at it, her reflection faint in the polished leather. Returning it meant inviting questions. Attention. Possibly trouble. Keeping it meant crossing a line she wasn't sure she could uncross. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a reminder for tomorrow's exam review. Her future nudging her from one side. Her fear pulling from the other. Maya reached for the wallet again, this time with resolve. If this was a test, she would pass it the only way she knew how. She tucked the wallet under her arm and headed for the phone, her steps measured, her heart beating just a little too fast. The diner felt different now, the familiar space charged with something unspoken. As she lifted the receiver, one thought settled clearly in her mind. Whatever happened next, there was no putting this moment back where she found it. The clock above the grill read 2:15 a.m. when Maya lifted the receiver. The phone was warm, slick with years of use. The cord coiled like it had heard too many late-night confessions to care about one more. She held it for a second longer than necessary, listening to the quiet of the diner settle around her. The neon outside hummed. The register clicked shut in the back. Everything else waited. She dialed the number printed on the card inside the wallet. Rang once, then stopped. Speak. The voice was male. Low. Flat. Not unfriendly, worse than that. Efficient. As if politeness were a luxury he didn't need. Maya swallowed. Hi, my name is Maya Johnson. I'm calling from. Where did you get this number? The voice cut in. Her fingers tightened around the receiver. It was inside a wallet that was left at the diner. I believe it belongs to. Silence. Not the kind that followed a dropped call. The kind that pressed back, dense and deliberate, as if someone on the other end were deciding what to do with her. She waited, breath shallow. Hold, the voice said. The line didn't disconnect. It stayed open, carrying nothing but faint static and the unsettling sense of being assessed from far away. Maya shifted her weight, suddenly aware of how small she sounded, how exposed. She could hang up, pretend the call failed. She didn't. A new voice came on the line. This is Victor Hale. The name landed with quiet force. Not loud, not threatening, just certain. Yes, sir, Maya said, the honorific slipping out without thought. You left your wallet in booth 7. I wanted to return it. You found it quickly, he said. Statement, not praise. It was wedged in the seat. I was cleaning. Another pause. Shorter this time. You opened it. Her heart stuttered. Just enough to find identification. That was not the question. Maya closed her eyes. Lying felt dangerous. So did the truth. Yes, she said finally. I did. The silence that followed was different. Heavier. As if the answer had confirmed something. There is a significant amount of cash inside, Victor said. You work in a diner. The words weren't accusatory. They were observational. That somehow made them worse. Yes, Maya replied. And it's yours. You could have kept it. I know. Why didn't you? Her grip tightened. She thought of her grandmother's kitchen table. The way bills had always been stacked neatly, paid slowly, honestly. Because it wasn't mine, she said. And because I don't want to owe money I didn't earn. The line stayed quiet long enough for doubt to creep in. Had she said too much? Too little? Where are you now? Victor asked. At the diner. We just closed. You will remain there. The command slid into place like it belonged there. I can lock up, Maya said carefully. I can secure the wallet until... No, Victor interrupted. You will stay where you are. The wallet does not leave your possession. Do you understand? Her chest tightened. Yes. A driver will arrive in 15 minutes. Maya glanced at the window, at the empty street washed in orange light. Sir. You will hand the wallet to him directly. You will not discuss its contents. You will not accept compensation. Relief flickered, brief and fragile. And Miss Johnson, Victor continued, his voice lowering just slightly. Confirm something for me. Yes. You did not remove anything from the wallet. Her mind raced. The truth hovered dangerously close to consequence. She chose her words with care. Everything inside is exactly as I found it. Another pause. Good, he said. We will see. The line went dead. Maya stood there, receiver pressed to her ear, listening to nothing. When she finally set it back on the hook, her hand was shaking. 15 minutes. The wallet sat on the counter, silent and heavy. Felt different now, not like temptation but like evidence. Proof that someone very far away had reached into her small, predictable life and taken an interest. She locked the front door and turned off the open sign. The diner felt cavernous without customers, every reflection in the chrome too sharp, too watchful. She sat on a stool behind the counter, the wallet resting in her lap, her eyes fixed on the street beyond the glass. She wasn't afraid of being robbed. She was afraid of being remembered. When headlights finally cut across the windows, slow and deliberate, Maya's pulse spiked. The car that pulled up wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. It parked with the confidence of something that knew it would not be questioned. Maya stood, smoothing her apron with hands that refused to steady. She had made the call. Now the wrong kind of man was coming to collect the answer. The minutes stretched the moment the call ended. Maya sat behind the counter, the wallet resting in her lap like a weight she couldn't set down. The diner felt different with the lights dimmed. Too quiet, too exposed. Every surface reflected something back at her. Her tired eyes in the chrome napkin holder, the red vinyl booths glowing faintly like warning signs. 15 minutes. She checked the clock once, then forced herself to stop. Time moved slower when she watched it. Outside, the street lay empty, washed in amber from the streetlights. A breeze nudged a paper cup along the sidewalk. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed and faded. Ordinary sounds, doing nothing to calm the knot tightening in her chest. Victor Hale hadn't asked her to describe the wallet. He hadn't thanked her. He hadn't even asked if she was safe. He had told her to wait. That was what unsettled her most. Maya shifted on the stool, resisting the urge to pace. She imagined all the ways this could go wrong. The driver could accuse her of taking something. The police could arrive instead. Victor himself could decide she wasn't worth the trouble of testing further. Her mind filled the silence with possibilities until each one felt plausible. She glanced down at the wallet. The leather looked darker now, absorbing the dim light. She thought about the cash inside. How easily it could have disappeared into her bag. How simple it would have been to walk away before anyone noticed. The thought didn't comfort her. It made her stomach turn. Her grandmother's voice surfaced again, steady as ever. Right choices don't stop being hard just because you make them. Maya pressed her lips together and listened. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Her own breathing sounded too loud. She stood and walked to the front window, peering out. Nothing. The street remained empty, as if the world had decided to hold its breath with her. She imagined eyes in the dark, unseen but attentive. The idea felt ridiculous, and yet she couldn't shake it. 10 minutes passed. She wiped the counter again, though it was already clean, the repetitive motion grounding her. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She flinched before pulling it out. A reminder for tomorrow's study group. The normalcy of it felt unreal. Maya slid the phone away and returned to the stool. The wallet hadn't moved. It felt warmer now, as if it had absorbed the heat from her body. She wondered what Victor Hale was doing at this exact moment. Sitting in an office, standing somewhere high above the city, or doing nothing at all, letting the waiting do its work for him. 5 minutes. The tension sharpened. Her heart beat faster, anticipation curdling into dread. She imagined the car pulling up, black, silent, impossible to ignore. She imagined the door opening and someone stepping out who looked like they belonged to a world she didn't understand. Headlights appeared at the end of the street. Maya's breath caught. The vehicle moved slowly, deliberately, as if in no hurry. Didn't speed. It didn't hesitate. It simply advanced, growing larger with each passing second until it eased to a stop in front of the diner. Black SUV. Clean. Unmarked. Its windows were dark enough to swallow the streetlight's glow. Maya stood. Her legs felt unsteady, but she forced herself to move. She adjusted her apron, then stilled her hands at her sides. The wallet remained in her grip, solid and undeniable. The engine idled. Seconds passed. Then the driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in dark clothing that looked expensive without drawing attention to itself. He scanned the street once, then turned toward the diner. The bell above the door chimed when he entered, the sound too bright for the tension that followed him inside. "Maya Johnson," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She placed the wallet on the counter and slid it toward him. It stopped just short of his hand. He didn't pick it up right away. His gaze moved over her, her uniform, her posture, the controlled tightness in her expression. It wasn't leering. It wasn't curious. It was evaluative. Finally, he reached out and lifted the wallet, weighing it once in his palm before slipping it into his coat. "Mr. Hale appreciates your cooperation." He reached into his pocket and placed a thick envelope on the counter where the wallet had been. Maya shook her head immediately. "I don't need." "It's not payment," the man said calmly. "It's closure." He turned and left without another word, the bell chiming again as the door shut behind him. The SUV pulled away, disappearing down the street as smoothly as it had arrived. Maya stared at the envelope, her heart pounding. The 15 minutes were over. And she knew, deep in her bones, that the silence that followed would be far more dangerous. Maya didn't touch the envelope right away. It sat on the counter where the wallet had been, thick and immaculate, as out of place in the diner as the man who had delivered it. The door had barely stopped swinging when the quiet rushed back in, heavier than before. She waited for the sound of the SUV's engine to fade completely before moving. The enforcer hadn't introduced himself. He hadn't smiled. He hadn't threatened her. He hadn't needed to. Everything about him had communicated the same message Victor Hale's voice had delivered over the phone. This was not a negotiation, and this was not over. Maya reached out and lifted the envelope. It was heavier than she expected. Too heavy. She slid a finger under the flap and opened it just enough to confirm what she already knew. Crisp, orderly, more than she was comfortable counting. No note. No explanation. Closure, the man had called it. Her hands trembled as she sealed it again and tucked it into her apron pocket. The money felt hot against her side, like it didn't belong to the same world as grease-stained uniforms and chipped coffee mugs. She locked the envelope in the safe beneath the register, turning the key with deliberate care. The finality of the click made her chest tighten. Whatever Victor Hale intended, she would not let impulse decide it for her. When she finally shut off the remaining lights and stepped outside, the night air felt sharper, colder. The street looked unchanged. Same cracked sidewalk, same flick-slash-compiler plastic benches at the bus stop, but Maya felt different moving through it. As if a line had been drawn around her. Invisible but unmistakable. She didn't take her usual route home. Instead, she walked the longer way, glancing back more than once, her senses tuned to every passing car, every shadow that lingered too long. Nothing followed her. That somehow made it worse. At home, she double-locked the door and sat on the edge of her bed, the envelope secured in a small metal box beneath a loose floorboard. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the enforcer's steady gaze, felt the weight of his attention. He hadn't asked if she opened the wallet. He had already known. The days that followed were quiet. Too quiet. No calls. No messages. No sign that Victor Hale or anyone connected to him existed beyond that single night. Maya returned to her routines. Classes, shifts, studying until her eyes blurred, but the normalcy felt thin, fragile. She became careful without meaning to. She didn't talk about the wallet. Didn't mention the envelope. Didn't spend a single dollar. The money remained untouched, sealed away like evidence in a case she didn't understand. Sometimes she caught herself scanning rooms, noting exits, listening for footsteps that weren't there. She started leaving work earlier, avoiding empty streets. Friends commented on how quiet she'd become. She brushed it off with tired smiles. 2 weeks passed. Then came the library. Maya was buried in her notes, tracing diagrams and memorizing pathways, when the air shifted. It was subtle, a prickle at the back of her neck, a sense of being observed. She looked up slowly. Victor Hale stood at the end of the aisle. He wasn't wearing a suit this time. Just a dark coat, perfectly tailored, hands resting casually at his sides. He looked less imposing than she'd imagined and more unsettling for it. He didn't approach. He didn't speak. He waited. Maya closed her notebook with care and stood. Her legs felt steady, her heartbeat loud. She walked toward him, stopping a few feet away. "Mr. Hale," she said quietly. He inclined his head, acknowledging her. "You've kept silent." "Yes. And the money. I haven't touched it." Then, faint approval crossed his features. Not a smile, just a loosening of something tight. "Good." They moved to a secluded corner without discussion, the library's hush wrapping around them. Victor didn't sit. He didn't need to. "The wallet," he said, "was not lost." Maya met his gaze. She had known this was coming. "It was placed," he continued. "I wanted to see who would notice it. And what they would do next. And I passed," she said. "You did," Victor agreed. "Not because you were honest. Because you were restrained." The distinction landed heavily. "You understand now why I sent someone else that night," he went on. "I needed to see how you reacted to authority that wasn't mine." Maya thought of the enforcer's quiet scrutiny, the envelope on the counter. "And you did exactly what you were told," Victor said. "And nothing more." She exhaled slowly. "So what happens now?" Victor studied her for a long moment, as if measuring something unseen. "Now," he said, "we discuss what your integrity is worth." The words echoed in her chest, equal parts promise and warning. Maya realized then that the man who had come to retrieve the wallet had not closed the transaction. He had opened it. Maya left the library with the weight of the envelope pressing against her thoughts, even though it wasn't in her hands. Victor Hale hadn't asked for it back. He hadn't told her to keep it either. He'd simply acknowledged its existence, the way one might acknowledge a tool already in use. That unsettled her more than any demand could have. She walked home slower than usual, every step measured, every shadow suspicious. The city felt sharper now, its edges more defined. The ordinary world hadn't changed, but her awareness of it had. At home, she pulled the metal box from beneath the loose floorboard and opened it. The envelope lay inside exactly where she'd left it, pristine and patient. She lifted it, weighing it in her hands. It still felt too heavy for paper and cash. Felt like intent. Maya sat on the floor, back against the bed, and opened it fully for the first time. The money was immaculate. Crisp bills stacked with care. Enough to make her chest tighten. Enough to solve problems she'd been living with for years. She imagined paying tuition without dread, buying groceries without counting items, sleeping through the night without the low hum of anxiety. She closed her eyes. This wasn't a gift. Gifts came with gratitude. This came with expectation. Victor Hale hadn't framed it as payment because payment implied completion, closure, an ending. This was leverage, quiet, undeniable. A reminder that he could reach into her life and rearrange it without asking. She slid the money back into the envelope and sealed it, hands steady now. If she spent it, she would confirm something about herself she wasn't ready to admit. If she returned it, she would provoke a response she couldn't predict. So she did neither. Days passed. And more. Maya returned to her routine, but it no longer felt like refuge. Every lecture hall, every shift at the diner, every bus ride carried the faint sense of being observed. No one approached her. No messages arrived. Victor Hale remained absent in the most deliberate way possible. That absence was the pressure. She noticed changes in herself. She stopped venting about money to friends. She avoided conversations about the future. She became careful with her words, her movements, her expressions. Integrity had taught her how to say no, but it hadn't taught her how to live under scrutiny. One evening after a long shift, she stood at the bus stop and watched a black sedan glide past without slowing. Her pulse spiked anyway. It took a full minute for her breathing to steady. At home, she locked the door and leaned against it, eyes closed. This was what the envelope did. It didn't buy comfort. It bought awareness. A week later, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. Her stomach dropped. She stared at the screen until it stopped ringing. No voicemail followed. No message. Just the brief reminder that silence could be broken at any time. That night, she dreamed of the wallet again, of finding it over and over, each time heavier, each time harder to put down. When she woke, she knew what Victor Hale was waiting for. Not gratitude. Not obedience. Decision. The envelope was a question he hadn't asked out loud. What will you do when power offers you relief without permission? Maya dressed carefully that morning, choosing simplicity over attention. She took the envelope from its hiding place and placed it in her bag. Not to spend, not to return, but to acknowledge its role in her life now. At the diner, she moved through her shift with quiet focus. Customers came and went. Plates clattered. The world continued its indifferent spin. Near the end of the night, her manager mentioned a man who'd been asking about her earlier in the week. Didn't leave a name, he said. Just wanted to know when you worked. Maya's hands stilled. She finished her shift and stepped outside into the cool air, the envelope heavy against her side. The street was empty, the sky dark and open above her. She understood it then. The money wasn't meant to be used. It was meant to follow her, to sit between her choices and her consequences, to remind her that Victor Hale didn't need to rush. He already had her attention, and soon, she suspected, he would ask for something far more valuable than honesty. Maya learned the sound of her own footsteps. She noticed how they echoed differently depending on the time of day, how early mornings made them sharper and late nights swallowed them whole. She noticed reflections in windows, the way glass could turn into a mirror without warning. She noticed cars that slowed too much at intersections and people who lingered a second longer than necessary. Nothing ever happened. That was the problem. The envelope stayed hidden, but its presence followed her everywhere. It sat between her thoughts when she studied, pressed against her awareness when she worked, hovered at the edge of her vision when she tried to sleep. Victor Hale didn't call. No one came for her. The silence felt intentional, curated to let her imagination do the work. She adjusted her routines without meaning to. She left for class earlier. She took different buses home. She stopped wearing earbuds, needing to hear everything around her. When friends asked why she seemed distracted, she blamed exams. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth. At the diner, she became meticulous. She counted tips twice. She wiped counters longer than necessary. She avoided empty booths and kept her back to the wall when she took breaks. Customers came and went, unaware that one quiet night had rewritten her internal map of safety. Sometimes she thought she saw him. Not Victor Hale himself, someone else. The edge of a dark coat disappearing around a corner. A man seated alone, not eating, not drinking, just watching. Each time she looked again, there was nothing. Paranoia, she told herself. But paranoia didn't explain how carefully she'd started choosing her words, how instinctively she now measured the weight of every decision. She hadn't touched the money. She hadn't spoken about it. She hadn't done anything wrong. And yet, she felt as if she were constantly being graded. One afternoon, she caught herself rehearsing explanations for things no one had asked her about. Why she took the long way home. Why she paid in cash instead of using her card. Why she'd stopped posting online altogether. She deleted her social media accounts a week later, telling herself it was for focus. The truth was simpler. Visibility felt dangerous. At night, sleep came in fragments. She woke at the slightest noise, heart racing, listening for sounds that never followed. When she dreamed, it was always the same image. The wallet resting in her hands, heavier each time she tried to put it down. Victor Hale had said nothing since the library. That silence became its own message. Maya understood now that power didn't need to chase. It waited. It let people adjust themselves around it, reshape their lives in anticipation of a demand that might never come. One evening after closing, she stood alone at the bus stop, arms crossed against the cold. The street was empty, the city holding its breath. A black sedan rolled past slowly. Headlights dimmed, engine barely audible. It didn't stop. It didn't need to. Maya's pulse didn't slow until the taillights disappeared. When she finally got home, she sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the wall. The envelope remained hidden beneath the floorboard, untouched, but its influence had already spread. It had taught her restraint, silence, awareness. It had taught her how to live like someone who mattered to the wrong kind of people. She thought about the choice she'd made at the diner, the moment she'd closed the wallet and decided to return it. She'd believed integrity was an ending, a clean line drawn between right and wrong. Now she knew better. Integrity was an invitation. And Victor Hale hadn't taken it lightly. As Maya lay back and stared at the ceiling, one realization settled into her chest, heavy and unyielding. Whatever came next wouldn't arrive as a threat. It would arrive as an opportunity. And she was no longer sure she would recognize the difference. The library was quiet enough to hear thoughts settle. Maya had claimed a corner table near the back, her books spread in careful order, her mind moving through diagrams and notes with forced discipline. Studying had become her refuge, the one place where rules still made sense, where answers followed logic instead of silence. She didn't hear him arrive. She felt him. It was a subtle shift, like the air tightening, like attention snapping into focus. Maya's pen paused mid-line. Her shoulders tensed before she could stop them. Slowly she looked up. Victor Hale stood at the end of the aisle. He wasn't dressed like the man from the diner anymore. No tailored suit. No deliberate contrast. He wore a dark coat, understated, perfectly fitted, the kind of clothing that disappeared unless you knew what to look for. In the harsh fluorescent light, his features were calm, almost ordinary. That made him more frightening. He didn't approach. He didn't speak. He simply waited, his gaze steady, unblinking, as if time itself bent slightly around his presence. Maya closed her notebook and stood. Her legs felt solid beneath her. Her heart was loud, but it wasn't panic she felt. It was clarity. She walked toward him, each step deliberate, stopping a few feet away. "Mr. Hale," she said quietly. He inclined his head. "Miss Johnson." They moved without discussion toward a secluded corner of the library, the kind reserved for rare books and forgotten research. Victor didn't sit. He didn't need to. He stood with relaxed precision, hands loosely folded, his attention fixed entirely on her. "You kept silent," he said. "Yes. And the envelope, untouched, was not surprise, confirmation." "Good," Victor said. That was the second test. Maya's breath caught despite herself. "Second. The first was honesty," he continued. "The second was restraint. Most people fail there. They rationalize. They justify. They convince themselves they've earned what doesn't belong to them. And I didn't," she said. "No," Victor agreed. "You waited." The word echoed with layered meaning. Maya straightened her shoulders. "You said the wallet wasn't lost." "It was not. You wanted to see who would take it. And who would return it," he corrected. "But more importantly, how." He stepped closer, not invading her space, but narrowing it just enough to remind her of the imbalance between them. "You didn't call immediately. You didn't panic. You didn't involve anyone else. You weighed the choice." "I did the right thing," Maya said. Victor's expression shifted slightly. Not dismissive, not impressed. Analytical. "You did the correct thing. There is a difference." Her jaw tightened. "So what am I to you? A statistic?" "No," he said. "An exception." The words settled heavily between them. "I don't want to be involved in whatever this is," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. "I returned your property. I followed your instructions. That should be the end." Victor studied her as if she were a complex equation. "It could have been," he said. "If you had taken the money." Her eyes flicked to his. "What?" "If you had spent it," he continued calmly, "I would have known exactly where to place you in my world. Useful. Predictable. Replaceable." Maya's pulse spiked. "And because I didn't." "Because you didn't," Victor said. "You complicate things." Silence pressed in around them, thick and watchful. "You don't belong to my organization," he went on. "You don't know its rules. You don't benefit from its protection. And yet, you demonstrated the kind of judgment I can't train." Maya's fingers curled at her sides. "You're saying my integrity makes me dangerous." "No," Victor said. "It makes you valuable." The word landed harder than any threat. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "No one who is chosen ever does," Victor replied. "That's the point." She shook her head. "I won't be owned." Victor's gaze sharpened. Not with anger but interest. "Then you should understand what ownership actually looks like before you decide." He reached into his coat and removed a phone. Not sleek. Not modern. Solid. Purpose-built. He placed it on the table between them. "I am offering you an opportunity," he said. "Not employment. Not charity. A future." Maya stared at the phone, her chest tightening. "And the cost?" Victor met her gaze without flinching. "Silence. Discretion. Loyalty when called upon. And if I refuse?" "Then you walk away," he said. "Poor. If. Forgotten." The word safe felt fragile. Conditional. Maya looked from the phone back to him. She understood now what the wallet had been, what the envelope represented. Not temptation. Preparation. Victor Hale hadn't tested her to see if she was good. He had tested her to see if she was capable of choosing when the price became real. And standing there in the quiet heart of the library, Maya realized the most unsettling truth of all. He wasn't forcing her. He was waiting to see who she would become. Maya didn't touch the phone. It sat between them like a boundary marker, small and unassuming, yet heavy with implication. She could feel its presence without looking at it, the way you feel the edge of a table in a dark room. "You're asking me to disappear," she said. Victor didn't correct her. He rarely corrected things that were true. "I'm offering you leverage," he replied. "Against a system that was never built for you to win." She folded her arms, grounding herself in the familiar pressure. "I didn't return your wallet so I could owe you. You returned it because you don't like debt," Victor said calmly. Not moral debt. Not financial debt. That instinct is why you're standing here. Maya exhaled slowly. Say it plainly. Victor stepped back, giving her space. Not kindness but strategy. I will fund your education in full. Tuition, book, housing, transportation. No loans. No interest. No paperwork that leads back to me. Her breath caught despite her efforts. The words hit with surgical precision, slicing through years of quiet fear. She thought of missed meals, of counting coins, of studying under flickering lights because the power bill was late again. And after? She asked. You graduate, Victor said. Debt-free. Qualified. Untethered from desperation. She laughed softly once without humor. That's the dream. Yes, he agreed. And dreams are the most efficient way to secure loyalty. There it was. Clean. Honest. I'm not a criminal, Maya said. No, Victor replied. You are an asset. The word made her flinch. You would not be asked to break the law, he continued. You would be asked to operate within its blind spots. Medical assistance. Discretion. Silence. For people who cannot afford attention. Her mind raced ahead of her heart, filling in the gaps she didn't want to see. Men who couldn't go to hospitals. Injuries that wouldn't be reported. Names that couldn't exist on forms. And if I say no, she asked quietly. Victor didn't hesitate. You walk out of this library and finish your shift tonight. Tomorrow, you return to counting tips and hoping nothing breaks before payday. Maya swallowed. And the envelope? You keep it, he said. Or you give it away. Or you burn it. It no longer matters. That wasn't true. They both knew it. Maya stared at the shelves lining the walls, rows of knowledge and promise and quiet ambition. She had spent so many hours here imagining a future that always felt just out of reach. She had believed that if she worked hard enough, stayed honest enough, the world would eventually meet her halfway. Victor Hale was not meeting her halfway. He was offering a bridge and a toll. Why me? She asked. Because you understand restraint, Victor said. Because you didn't try to impress me. Because you waited. The word again. Loaded. Intentional. You think that makes me loyal, Maya said. I think it makes you careful, Victor replied. Loyalty grows from care. Silence settled between them, not heavy this time, but expectant. Maya looked down at the phone. It was simple. Unremarkable. It didn't promise anything on its surface. Her hands trembled, not with fear but with clarity. She accepted her life would change completely. Not loudly, not visibly, but permanently. She would move through the world with a safety net no one could see, tied to a man who did not lose interest in what he owned. If she refused, she would walk away intact, but unchanged. Still hoping. Still counting. Victor watched her without urgency. He knew time was on his side. Maya reached out. Her fingers hovered above the phone, the final inch feeling longer than any distance she'd ever crossed. This doesn't make me yours, she said. Victor's expression didn't change. Ownership is not declared, he said. It's demonstrated. She closed her fingers around the device. The weight surprised her, not physically but emotionally. Solid, cold, final. I accept, Maya said, her voice steady even as something inside her shifted. Victor inclined his head, the slightest acknowledgement. Not satisfaction. Not triumph. Recognition. Good, he said. Then we begin carefully. As he turned to leave, Maya remained where she was, the phone warm in her hand now, her reflection faintly visible in the dark glass of the shelves. Her dream had just come true. And for the first time since she could remember, she wasn't sure whether to celebrate or grieve. The phone never rang the way Maya expected it to. There was no dramatic buzz in the middle of the night, no coded message demanding urgency. Instead, it vibrated once on a quiet Tuesday afternoon while she was studying pharmacology, the movement subtle enough that only she noticed. Unknown caller. She didn't hesitate. Yes, she said softly. Was. Then Victor Hale's voice, calm and precise, as if they had spoken only hours ago instead of days. "You're free this evening." It wasn't a question. "I am," Maya replied. "Good. Car will collect you at 7. Bring nothing you don't want replaced." The line went dead. Maya sat back in her chair and closed her eyes. Around her, the library hummed with ordinary life. Pages turning, keyboards clicking, quiet ambition unfolding in 100 different directions. None of it touched her anymore. She felt as if she were standing behind glass, present but already removed. At 7 sharp the car arrived. Black, unmarked, clean in a way that suggested nothing ever spilled inside it. The driver didn't introduce himself. He didn't need to. Maya slid into the back seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her breathing measured. The city passed by in familiar fragments. Bus stops she used to wait at, grocery stores where she'd counted coins, the diner's neon sign glowing faintly in the distance. Each landmark felt like a farewell she hadn't planned. They stopped at a building she'd never noticed before. It rose quietly from the street, unassuming, its presence deliberately forgettable. Inside everything changed. The air was still, controlled. People moved with purpose but without haste, acknowledging Victor with brief nods as he joined her moments later. He looked the same as always, unremarkable at a glance, undeniable if you knew what to see. "This is temporary," he said as they walked. "Orientation." Maya absorbed the word. Orientation. As if she'd joined a company. As if this were normal. They entered a room with no windows. Clean. Bright. A medical table at the center. Supplies arranged with obsessive care. "This is where you'll work," Victor said. "When you're called." She looked around, her chest tightening. "And if I say no next time?" Victor turned to face her fully. "Then this ends," he said. "But understand something, Maya. Declining an opportunity is different from betraying one." The distinction chilled her. "I won't betray you," she said. "I know," Victor replied. "That's why you're here." He gestured toward the table. "Sit." She did. A man entered, older, injured, clearly in pain but composed. He didn't look at her. He didn't ask her name. He trusted the room to handle everything else. Maya moved on instinct. She asked questions. She assessed. She treated. Her hands were steady. Her mind focused. This, at least, was familiar. This was what she'd trained for. When it was over, the man left without a word. Victor watched her closely. "You didn't hesitate." "I didn't ask who he was," Maya said. "Good." The approval didn't feel like praise. Felt like confirmation. Later, alone in the car again, Maya stared at her reflection in the darkened window. She looked the same. Tired. Focused. Ordinary. But something fundamental had shifted. She thought of the envelope still hidden beneath her floorboard, the money she'd never touched. She thought of the phone now resting easily in her bag, no longer foreign, no longer heavy. Integrity had always been her compass. Now it was her leash. Victor hadn't broken her values. He had aligned them with his needs. He hadn't asked her to become someone else. He had simply given her a place where who she already was could be used. The car pulled away, merging back into the flow of the city. Maya watched the lights blur and realized the truth she hadn't allowed herself to say out loud until now. She hadn't been forced into darkness. She had walked into it, eyes open, hands steady, choosing security over freedom. And the most unsettling part was this. She wasn't sure she would ever want to leave.